Hello, and welcome to FI for Kids, a podcast about guiding your kids on the path to financial independence and extraordinary lives. I'm your host, Dominic Delacqua. It's the beginning of a new year, and fitness is on a lot of people's minds, so we're going to start the year with a couple of episodes on the similarities between working on health and fitness goals and working towards financial goals. Consistency over time is essential to both pursuits, and teaching your kids this lesson early will pay untold dividends for them in adulthood. Our first guest in this limited series is Gary McGiven. Gary is a physical therapist and a certified exercise expert for aging adults. In college, he played offensive line for the BYU Cougars, and he has a lifelong history with sports and exercise. Welcome, Gary, and thanks for coming on the show. I'm looking forward to this conversation about exercise, the similarities between exercise and money management. And I know you said you're just on your way back from the gym. Is that right?
Yeah, I woke up a little later than usual and I wanted to get some exercise in before we did this, so I finished just before we started. So,
That's perfect. Perfect. I love it. Um, so why don't we start with you just telling us a little bit about your background with fitness and exercise, and then we'll go from there. So just tell us about yourself.
okay. So exercise, it's kind of been ingrained in me. I had parents that were pretty involved with exercise, recognized the value early in my life. My mom, she always had a group of women that she would go walk with every morning. And we're in Utah, and in the winter months, we had a pass to the rec center, and she and her group of women would go to the rec center, and a lot of those women had kids my age, and we would go with them at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning before school, and while they're walking, we're messing around on the track, or we're out playing basketball, or just doing things like that. So we had that example early in our lives. I also grew up playing sports. I wrestled. I started wrestling at the age of 5. And if you've ever been to a wrestling practice, those are pretty grueling.
Oh, yeah, I wrestled in high school, and it's a junior high and high school. So yeah, they're brutal.
Yeah. So, and we had our wrestling practices, and then we would prepare for some big national tournaments. And I remember my dad taking us to the rec center, and we'd get in extra workouts in prior to those national tournaments. And then growing up, playing sports, it's always been important to exercise, to be in shape, to be fit. I've had examples of that throughout my life that have helped me from a young age all the way up until now. I'm 44 years old and still trying to keep that motivation to stay fit.
Yeah. Well, it's a lifelong practice, right? That's one of the reasons one of the similarities between managing your money and managing your own health, I think, right, is that it's not something that ever ends. You have to continue to sort of work at it all the time. Um,
Absolutely.
and the idea of examples from other people and modeling, I also think is really important. So there are there are knowledge things you need to know about exercise, just like there are with money management, but also the idea of parents modeling that for their kids, I also think is important. But you mentioned, your mom walking every morning and that being an example for you. It just made me think when I was a kid, every morning my mom would do exercises with Jack LaLanne. He had a TV show back in the day. And she would do her exercises with Jack LaLanne every day because she was always someone who, even well into her 90s, exercised. I mean, it diminished what she was able to do over time, but she stuck with it. So, it's just important. It makes your life better. Even though oftentimes you don't want to do it, it makes your life better in the long run.
Oh yeah.
So then so you played sports in college, right? You were football
Yeah.
at BYU, so at a major university. So you've not only worked on yourself and your own exercise, but you've had to teach others as well as a physical therapist uh, how to how to manage their fitness. So just talk to us a little bit about some of that.
Playing collegiate sports. Obviously, it requires a level of fitness that's a little bit higher than the average. And then, along with, unfortunately, it's not uncommon to be injured when you play sports. And I had more than my fair share of injuries. And going through the rehab process myself helped me to realize that the positive environment that therapy provides, and the passion that I had to see others maximize their potential. And that led me to going to physical therapy school, getting a doctorate degree, and learn all that I can so that I can help other people to realize their potential. And even into, I mean, I work primarily with the geriatric population. These are our grandmothers, our great grandmothers, our aunts, our uncles that also have great potential to maximize their levels of function and even fitness, and have a quality of life that brings them joy and a feeling of worth to their life.
So you mentioned quality of life, and I think that's an important aspect of financial independence as well. So in talking about money management and financial planning for kids, those are tools and that information is important. Normal people, even if they've reached financial independence, have to make choices. And so knowing yourself and knowing what things in life you really value is a key component of the path to financial independence. So helping kids understand how to learn about themselves and understand themselves and what they really value so they can make smart choices for them about where to spend their money. So then that leaves them an excess that they can save and then invest and then work that path towards financial independence. And that quality of life really sort of applies at all ages. Because a lot of people who don't manage their money, kids aren't taught to manage their money. They find themselves, they might be making a good wage and living paycheck to paycheck because they're not planning, they're not having even some basic discipline like you have to have with exercise. They're not applying that to their money. And every time they get a pay raise or they get a new job where they're making more money, then they just spend more and they buy more stuff. And then they're not as fulfilled and happy because they're spending money on things that many of them maybe they really don't value. And if they put more money aside, they would have a better cushion and could work more towards financial independence and gives them more options. And I think that's what we're trying to help parents teach their kids at an earlier age and guide them towards that path so that their kids, as they grow up and become adults, have more options and more opportunities to do all sorts of things in their lives, and they're not forever tied to trading away their time for money. So now as a to let the audience in on sort of our prior history a little bit. So we've known each other for a while, and we've actually over the last couple of years made a point to help each other stay motivated towards our fitness goals. And this is where I think exercise and working towards goals is very similar to financial planning and working towards goals, is it's rarely is it a straight path. And things come up and you'll make progress for a while, you do good, and then sometimes you get extra busy, or if it's finances, maybe emergencies come up and that sets you back a little bit or derails some of your plans. And then if you want to keep going, you have to recommit and sort of get yourself back on track. So can you talk about your experience maybe over the last year or two with your exercise and fitness goals you've had for yourself and what that's been like, some of the ups and downs and how you've managed those and gotten yourself back on track?
Yeah, so there was a time. I mean, it's a constant battle, right? I'll have several good months in a row of consistent, pretty healthy eating, consistent time with focus on my fitness. But there was a time where I was feeling kind of in a lull in that regard, and I actually remember it was when we were up in Colorado, and at around that time there was some focus on the book Four Disciplines of Execution.
Hmm.
And when I couldn't and I think this relates back to exercise. It really can relate to anything. If you have certain things that bring value to your life that would be meaningful to set goals around it. It doesn't matter if it's fitness, if it's financial independence, what it is. I think these things apply. So at that point, I wasn't exercising a lot. I wasn't doing a lot for myself. It was all just work related. So I set a goal for myself to read a book a month, which for some is nothing. For me, not being an avid reader, I set that goal, and then I set a goal to be more healthy. And when you set goals, it's important to have you know, if we're talking 4 disciplines of execution, you focus on what's really important, and then you set kind of what they call lead measures or process goals, things that are predictive of the end outcome that you want, and then having a way to measure those things and reminders of what your goals are, and then having somebody as an accountability partner. I'm the type of person that if I don't have something in place, accountability measures in place, then more often than not, I will let my like there's a book that calls it the saboteur, like sabotage yourself,
Sure.
um, and you'll talk yourself out of things that if you have an accountability partner, that doesn't happen as regularly. Obviously, setting the goal is the most important thing. Having something that you're focusing on, but then having that accountability that's going to help push you through, and then being consistent. I think where I've fallen short is I'll achieve a goal. I'll be ecstatic that I've met that goal, but then I'll let a month or two go by before setting another goal, and I've almost gotten back to where I was in the beginning, and I'm almost starting all over. So that we've talked about the consistency, and then accountability. I think is really important as you're setting goals and focusing on what's really important to you.
So the book you mentioned, The Four Disciplines of Execution, that's by Chris McChesney, Sean Covey, and Jim Hewling. I'll put that in the show notes if anybody wants to check that out. And just to add a little bit to that, so you talked about goals and setting goals, but and then you also talked about lead measures. And so I'm going to take just a second to explain that. And that can be a confusing concept, I think, but it's so important. So in a nutshell, you start with setting a goal, right? They talk about wildly important goals. So in this case, let's say that's your exercise, your fitness goals. But those are what they call lag measures, which means you don't know if you've met the goal or not until you've already sort of gotten there. So let's say you had a goal for a month out or 3 months out, but you're not really going to know if you met it until after you get there. So the way that you have to work towards those goals, and this is the consistency part, is what they call lead measures. And those are the things that you do on a day-to-day basis that you know are going to get you, they're going to move you towards that goal. You said they're predictive, and that's what they mean by that. These are the things that if you do them, you know are going to move you towards your goal. So,
Yeah,
and
sorry to cut you off. There's another book that calls it a process goal,
oh, okay.
and I think that helps to kind of explain what a lead measure is. It's that process that you're going
the
through.
the steps that you take. Yeah, I like to think of them as habits, right? Because it's
Yeah,
the same kind of thing. So whatever works for you, for anyone listening to get that it makes sense to you. So exercise is an easy example to explain it, right? If you have a goal to lift a certain amount of weight or lose a certain amount of weight in a set period of time, you have to do certain things on a daily basis in order to get there. You have to go to the gym and work out. You have to eat nutritional, healthy meals and not snack on a bunch of high calorie, low nutrient dense foods that are just going to make you pack on more weight. And if you do those things consistently day after day, if you eat well and you exercise, then you're going to lose weight and move towards those goals, or you're going to get stronger and move towards those goals. To the extent that you don't follow those daily processes or those daily habits, then you're going to struggle to meet those goals. And I think it's pretty obvious then to see, oh, sure, there's a correlation there with managing your money. So if you track what you spend and you know where your money's going, and then you start making decisions about, you know what, I'm not going to spend that money on those things because that's kind of nice, but I don't need another coat or I don't need another pair of shoes or another bag or, I don't need to go through fast food again. I'm going to do something a little bit different and I'm going to take that money and save it so that then I can put it into investment. And if you do those things consistently over time, you'll find that your money grows so that you can build up a core of savings that now you have more financial stability, right? So you save up 3 months or 6 months worth of your monthly expenses that you've got in case of any emergencies. And from there, if you continue to put that money away, then you're able to invest it and make it start growing for you. And if you're consistent about that, that's how you reach financial independence at an age long before traditional retirement age. And I think that's what most people would want for their kids, because then we're back to that idea of, man, if I can show my kids the habits and skills that they need to manage their money and plan well, and they are at a point where they can be financially independent in their 30s, 40s, or even 50s, that frees them up that they don't have to continue to trade their time for money until they're 70 years old. And that doesn't mean that they have to sit around and, play video games, watch Netflix, and eat ice cream all day long. To me, that wouldn't be a very fulfilling life. I mean, it sounds good for short periods of time, but then you pay a price for that, right? Then you lose all your energy because you're not exercising and you're not eating right. And then it's just not very fulfilling. So they don't have to necessarily quit doing things, but they can maybe decide, you know what, I've always had this interest in art or in music, or I want to do things that are more service oriented, but I didn't make very much, you don't make very much money from some of those things, and that wasn't a good way for me to support my family. But now that I'm financially independent, I really want to do animal rescue, or I want to go help whatever it is. I want to do Habitat for Humanity and spend time doing that. They can do volunteer work. Whatever it is that lights them up, they have all sorts of options if you can show your kids how to reach financial independence before retirement age. And that's where I think, this idea of the four disciplines of execution, setting goals, and then following the lead measures or the process goals or the daily habits, whatever you want to call those, is so important, and why there's such a correlation with exercise. Because you mentioned with exercise, you'll do good for a while, right? You're following the processes you need to follow and you're making good progress. You achieve a goal and you feel good and you're like, okay, I'm gonna relax for a little bit here. And that's you run the risk then always of, oh, wait a minute, now it's been 2 months and I didn't get back on track and I wasn't doing those daily things and now I've lost ground and you're frustrated. And then you have to recommit. And we've talked about that a lot because I've gone through that on and off for many years. And so I think the same things again apply with money. So it's an ongoing daily practice to manage your money and pay attention to it and be a good steward of it and make it work for you. Same as you do with your exercise and your eating.
Yeah, I think it's the parallels between the two is that discipline, right? And that doesn't mean that, as kids we want to spend money on doing fun things, and we've set goals with our kids. We've got one going right now that why not motivate my kids to do something, achieve some goal, so that we're going to take them to Disneyland if they achieve this goal.
Yeah.
And we all know how expensive that is. I guess that's something maybe we haven't talked as much about is the celebration of achieving a goal, right? And that doesn't, if you're talking about financial independence, maybe some could view a trip to Disneyland as maybe veering off of that path of financial independence because of the cost. But I think there has to be things that you look forward to as you achieve goals, some sort of celebration tied to that, and then just make sure that you have a plan to get on track. So my kids have done a great job with the goal that we've set, and it's kind of health and financially related for our kids. We hope to take them to Disneyland and celebrate the goal that they've set. So I think that's important, but it really comes down to that discipline. If you're disciplined to work out, if you're disciplined to even sit down and reflect and set goals, um, then that's going to carry over into really any aspect of your life, whether it's financial freedom, health, relationships, just having that discipline to realize that you have to be consistent. You have to have a process. You have to have some kind of goal or outcome that you're working towards to achieve something and have that fulfillment in life.
Yeah, I think that idea actually of celebration is super important because you're not just exercising just to exercise. You're not just putting money away just to put money away. You're doing that to make your life better, to give you more opportunities or make you feel more vital and have more energy. Which brings me back to a question I wanted to ask. You'd mentioned when we were first starting to talk about kind of the ups and downs of exercise and working towards your goals, and we talked about kind of that consistency and that daily discipline. You mentioned it was a constant battle. You've got to put in that discipline to keep working at it, and some days you don't want to. And the question I have is, it sometimes feels like a struggle, and you sometimes really have to force yourself to get started. And we're talking about exercise here, but that same thing is true in a different way with money. Is it worth it?
Oh, absolutely. When you accomplish a goal, like just your self-worth, your self-confidence, everything, at least in my experience, has just brought greater fulfillment to my life. There's a sense of there's just that sense of accomplishment, and the release of I'm sure there's a release of dopamine, some
Yeah.
neurotransmitter chemical release in your body that as you achieve something, it's almost like a drug. I don't know if you can say that on a podcast, but
Yeah, you're good.
that feeling that comes over you as you've accomplished something. I mentioned the reading goal that I had set. And I remember very vividly when I finished the last book. It was like December 30th or something,
Hmm.
and I had my I had my wife drive. We were driving down to my sister's house. It was about an hour and a half drive, and I finished my 12th book for the year with very little time to spare. And I just remember the feeling that came over me. I was so excited. I told my wife, "Hey, I accomplished my goal." This it was the first time I had made a New Year's resolution and actually stuck with it.
Hmm.
And so it's definitely worth it. And I think it becomes more worth it as you have something, as you accomplish that goal that you're working towards. I've got something going on, a fitness goal going with my brother. We're accountability partners, and our plan is to go on a golfing trip as we both achieve our goal. And so yeah, having something to look forward to, but to make it more worth it, but also just the fact that you've accomplished a goal is very rewarding. And yeah, that, and it keeps you going to want to set more goals and keep that consistency because of that feeling that you have as you accomplish a goal.
Yeah. Well, and I can see your face light up when you answer that question, and I would completely agree with that. I think with exercise, you force yourself to do it those days you don't want to. And going back to Jack LaLanne, I read an interview with Jack LaLanne many years ago, and for anybody who doesn't know Jack LaLanne, I'll put a link to him in the show notes, but and you should look him up if you're not familiar with him because he was one of the original fitness guys and just led this incredible life and did these incredible sort of fitness things for decades and decades. So this was a whole life of exercise and teaching other people and inspiring other people to exercise and to be healthier and to be fit. And he once said, in an interview, he goes, "Look, anybody who tells you that they want to get up and go to the gym at 5 a.m. is a damn liar." And it's like, no, well, good. He's saying that, and he's someone who's been doing this forever and inspiring everybody. It's hard, but doing hard things in life is really essential. You have to do it anyway, even if you don't want to. And so you might as well embrace it. And then it becomes like you're saying, Gary, it becomes, oh, it is fulfilling. And so you do feel better. And that same thing is true with money. So, I did not manage my money well for a long time, and it was a lot of unnecessary stress and difficulty. And once I finally got that together and got to the point where I had financial stability, meaning I had 6 months of living expenses set aside in the bank, man, the sense of freedom and accomplishment and, well, quite frankly, stability that that provides, it's difficult to describe. So if parents can teach their kids those things at an early age, and your kids as they move into adulthood always have that base of financial stability, it just reduces so much stress and potential worry from their lives and sets them up to continue to sort of work and build wealth so that they have more opportunities. And that's again where I think it goes along the same with exercise and taking care of yourself, because it's not just that you've accomplished the goal and you feel good about that. Those things are all true, but you also just feel better, period. You have more energy, and your thinking is clearer, and you're able to deal with unpredicted stressors in life better. And that's true if you have money in the bank as stability, and also if you just feel healthy and stronger. And back to your idea of celebration and talking about Disneyland. It's funny you bring up Disneyland because we have another episode where planning for Disneyland for a trip with a 10-year-old was an important money management thing that a dad and his son sort of talked about, because the motivating factor was we want to do a trip to Disneyland. So it was a great learning lesson about money, and the end result was this great celebration and lifelong memories. And that brings me back to the point of exercise is not to just put yourself through hardship. The point of making choices about where you're spending your money is not to deprive yourself, it's to make deliberate decisions so that you're making your life richer and more fulfilling. So if you're using Disneyland as a way to teach your kids some life lessons, that's fantastic. And the end result is, yeah, and then we get to go do this cool thing that you guys are always going to remember. I mean, that's really in many ways as good as it gets. And the whole point of FI is figuring out what you really value and then moving yourself towards that and creating more opportunities for yourself. And that does require discipline, like you said, absolutely. But discipline isn't deprivation. It's making intelligent choices for you because you're going to make your life better. And so those celebrations are a huge part of that. Or those trips, if that's what you want to do. Or if it's, and then you identify the other things where, oh, we're spending a lot of money on these, and maybe those, we don't really value those so much. We'll cut those out so we have more money for these other things. And that's really what it's all about. Creating a life that brings you the most amount of joy and fulfillment. And the purpose of our podcast is to help parents teach their kids those things about money so that they have more opportunities as they go along.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I was really impressed when I heard that you were retiring from your therapy resource position at a relatively young age, right? But through that process, I remember you going on trips to Italy, and that there was still travel and things that you were able to do while you were still developing your or gaining your financial independence to where you could go do something else that you were passionate about. And it's very motivating, and I think there's a lot of good principles that you can learn from that.
Yeah. If you're paying attention to what you're doing with your money and making deliberate choices, you can still have a great life. I know what things that we really sort of enjoy. We enjoy eating out, but we don't do it all the time because we watch the money that we spend there and try to make the most of our enjoyment of it, but also that conflicts sometimes with your fitness goals.
Yeah.
So, right, so it's a balance. So we make deliberate choices, but when we do it, we really enjoy it. And yeah, we do really enjoy travel. So we do the research to travel affordably as best we can, but then we make a point to set money aside to do those trips because that's something again that we've decided that we really value. We don't buy a lot of toys because those just aren't things that are important to us. That doesn't mean that they're not important to other people. For other people, having an RV and a boat and doing those things every weekend might be what they really thrive on, and travel isn't as important to them or something else. So there's no one right or wrong answer for everybody. It's what are the things that really bring you the most joy, and then focus on those, spend money on those, and don't spend money on the other things. Thank you so much, Gary, for making the time. Thank you so much for coming on. It's a good conversation.
Yeah, thank you. I enjoyed it. It was good seeing you. It's been too long.
Yeah, it has been too long. Thank you for listening to this episode of the FI for Kids podcast. Please tell others about the show, leave us a 5-star review, and if you haven't already, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel, or wherever you get your pods. Our intro and exit music this episode are courtesy of Douglas Cameron, and because it's goal setting time, the exit music is here to pump you up. You can find Doug's music at douglascameron.net or at Spotify. Thanks again, and we'll talk next week.